Hello everyone and welcome back to In Other News. My name is Erica Adamson. I am a graduate of the University of Vermont Political Science Department and I also work in the legal field here in town. I'm joined tonight by my fellow host Gabe Salazar, who also works in the legal community, and he is a fellow part-time political analyst, as well as a very special guest, attorney Angelo Catanzaro. Angelo joined us several months ago to discuss protests in Los Angeles, and we're very excited to have his insight and his opinions back for another show. So tonight we will be discussing redistricting, or what some are calling gerrymandering in the state of Texas. And as we speak, it is Wednesday, August 20th, and the Texas House is currently debating proposed changes in the electoral districts in the state of Texas. If this goes through, and it is very likely to, Republicans will gain 5 additional seats in the House of Representatives and 5 congressional districts. The balance will go from, I believe, 25 seats out of the 38 for Republicans to 30 out of 38. So I was hoping that we could start tonight's discussion just by going over some of these new developments in Texas and what's been going on with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good place to start would be where this all began. As the current proposal for gerrymandering began, it's actually been asynchronous to the typical district replanning as indicated by the U.S. Census once every 10 years. So this call to action came about through the advice or recommendation of the current president, who asked the governor of Texas if they would initiate a new plan for redistricting in order to gain the political advantage. Given this, Texas has begun its mid-year, its 5th year only, of a plan to start a redistricting. So this is where currently the state of Texas stands. It is attempting to go forward with this redistricting plan. As far as the response from other states, California has indicated that if Texas does go through with this, then it will respond with its own initiative to redraw its own district map to match and to essentially offset any political advantages that Texas would gain.
So before we go any further, I wanted to ask both of you why this particular redistricting plan is so controversial when redistricting is something that is to be done at least every 10 years, and it is not required to happen only after a census. So what makes the Texas plan so controversial?
Largely, I would think that it's wholly due to the fact that it's being done at the request of the president. That was one of the largest vocal points about this redistricting plan going forward in Texas. Secondly, it is unusual to its usual time frame for redistricting. Again, usually in line with the census, the state will do the redrawing of their district map. So in that sense, many of the politicians within the state of Texas have said that this is quote unquote cheating, this is quote unquote unfair. And so on that regard, I mean, it's made very many people upset.
I think the biggest reason that it's been in the news so much is that Democrats have come to grip with the reality that what there is being done is entirely legal, okay, and they were essentially outmaneuvered in trying to gain more congressional seats through a perfectly legal process. Now, as Gabe said, this is not typical, but it's not illegal. The Constitution does not require that the redistricting take place every 10 years. It can take place as often as the state legislature in a particular state determines that it's going to be. And the fact that it is being done in a manner which gives political advantage to the Republican Party that controls the state legislature in Texas, okay, is just one of the tools that are being used by the Texas politicians to take advantage of that political advantage that they have. I'm not going to say it was a knee-jerk reaction by Democrats and others, but it was a wake-up call that there are things that you can do to gain political advantage, okay, and to better position yourself in elections, and they were beat to the punch. And that's what caused the controversy.
Yeah, I think it's just unique also how overt they are in this gerrymandering attempt. Normally, I think when you're gerrymandering, you want to have a little bit of plausible deniability about it. But today, when they were debating it in the Texas House, one state representative, Todd Hunter, explicitly said, "The underlying goal of this plan is straightforward: improve Republican political performance." According to the U.S. Supreme Court, we can use political performance in drawing congressional districts, and that is what we've done. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
He's 100% spot on.
I mean, are there any limits that can be done for gerrymandering?
There's a lot of limits that can be done for certain kinds of gerrymandering, but if the predominant intent is political advantage, there are none. The Supreme Court has recently ruled in 2019 that that political advantage is not a suspect classification. It doesn't really involve individual personal rights, and therefore the courts actually have no jurisdiction to adjudicate whether or not a plan based on political advantage is unconstitutional or unlawful. The court pointed out to the reality that when the framers wrote the Constitution, they specifically gave the right to create districts and to control the election of congressional representatives to state legislatures, which, by the way, are political entities. Okay, and so my personal view, I don't think that the Democrats overreacted, but I think they knew from the very jump start that they weren't going to win any legal battle over stopping it, because there was nothing that I can see that was unlawful.
Per AP News, it did seem as though one of the responses to this gerrymandering attempt was to gain some political advantage in order to not have a midterm failure against the dominant political party currently. So it seems as though that was the intention behind it. Is there any, let's say, legal basis for designating political intent as masking over other potential avenues for gerrymandering?
I believe that there could be if you could tie the racial suggestion to the gerrymandering. I mean, obviously, when you're redistricting, you're also separating races, you're separating classes, you're separating a lot of different things, but that's not, if the primary intent is not racial, okay, then it passes constitutional muster. There have been examples, very clear examples, of where gerrymandering or redistricting clearly was designed to place one ethnicity, either apart or all together, for political advantage. And that racial gerrymandering was actually outlawed by Congress in the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I mean, Congress has the authority and the ability to control what goes on in this process, but very infrequently have they done anything significant to control it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I just wanted to step back also and just kind of define gerrymandering for all of our viewers and what makes that. I mean, all gerrymandering is redistricting, but not all redistricting is gerrymandering. And I think part of the difficulty in fighting against it or stopping gerrymandering is just that it is such an imprecise term, right? There are certain requirements for redistricting. I know that there have to be roughly equal populations within each district, and I believe they all have to be contiguous areas. But when does it become gerrymandering and not just redistricting? And what are the methods involved with gerrymandering?
Is it just political advantage?
Well, the gerrymandering generically is the practice of drawing electoral districts to the benefit of one political party. That's the base definition of gerrymandering, okay? Whether you're doing it for racial intent or whether you're doing it for political advantage intent, that's where the line is drawn. If it's for racial intent, then it is not lawful because Congress has enacted legislation that says it's unlawful, and because the Supreme Court has said that it is invading the personal rights of individuals under the 5th and 14th Amendment. And the other requirements for the districts were spelled out in the Constitution or in case law later on, as you said, that each district has to be approximately the same number of constituents in each district, and they have to be contiguous. Other than that, there are no real rules for setting these districts. And there have been multiple examples by Democrats and Republicans and probably other parties of doing this for the last 200 years. Gerrymandering started, so I read, before the Constitution was even signed. The very term gerrymandering comes from an attempt of the governor of Massachusetts, Eldridge Gerry, who drew a map in Massachusetts in 1812 that looked like a salamander. And so that map was printed in a local newspaper, and the term caught on. So gerrymandering has been going on for a long time, and it is the restructuring of district lines for political advantage. And unfortunately or fortunately, as you may view it, the Supreme Court said, well, that is not something that the federal courts can adjudicate.
Has the court ever indicated whether there could be a purely objective, even politically neutral method for redistricting that would not constitute, some kind of favor or intent by a politician?
I have not read a case that suggests that. In fact, in the recent case that we were talking about, the 2019 case, the opponents to the plan in that case were basically trying to argue that it was unfair, that the type of gerrymandering that was done, and that's the same argument that we're hearing now in Texas, that it's unfair because they manipulated the lines in such a fashion that it is likely, to very heavily favor that party. But the court essentially said that they do not have a crystal ball. They cannot adjudicate issues based on what might occur in an election in the future. And even if it turns out to be lopsided, that's the exercise of political advantage. They pointed out in two cases back in the late 1990s that each case where a plan or a districting plan was challenged and the Supreme Court allowed it to stand, in the next two elections, the party who had opposed it gained seats. Now they didn't mention probably the dozens of times that has occurred,
Sure.
and they didn't gain any seats. But that was the reasoning of the court, and that's the reasoning that carries today. That you can't make judicial decisions based on some hypothetical election that has not occurred.
As far as your estimates on whether either of you, do you feel like this, let's say, deference to the states is currently in the best healthy interest of democracy in this country? I mean, should we just let things be as they have been, or should we make changes?
Well, my personal opinion is that we need changes because we're not in 1790 anymore.
Yeah.
And the political attitudes and the political facilities that the states have and the people in the states have changed quite a bit. And I mean, I don't know what the answer is. These independent commissions, I think, which one of you had mentioned, some states have adopted as a way of being more fair, is possibly a solution. But the Constitution doesn't allow, the Constitution mandates that we have districts and that we don't do, like in Vermont, we don't have a district. We have one district because we don't have enough population to have more than one district. So I think Congress is the only vehicle that can correct this problem by, in my view, making partisan gerrymandering illegal. And then imposing some sort of a standard, that reverts back to, hey, you do geographically contiguous sections without resort to race and without resort to political advantage. But Congress doesn't seem likely to do that.
Right.
Congress could also take the authority away from the states. That's not going to happen. Okay.
Right. Recently, I believe in 2021, Congress did pass a bill for the Freedom in Voting Act. So that would mandate that each state would have to adopt an independent commission for any future voting redistricting in order to, again, try to assist with this. It hasn't obviously passed, has not received any majority, but it is an idea, and I think it's one that more and more voters are understanding to be, you know, this perpetual back and forth when it comes to gerrymandering.
Well, good. I mean, it sounds like an idea that should be explored, but then you have to consider, how are these commissions going to be appointed? Are they going to be appointed by the state legislature and then still be packed anyway?
Right.
Or are they going to be voted in? I mean, so there would be a lot of mechanical things that would have to be examined to see whether or not these independent commissions would work. I mean, in California, the independent commission, now what was the status of that case, Erica?
So they're actually voting on that tomorrow, is this correct, whether to suspend the independent commission through 2030
Correct. Right.
in order for Gavin Newsom to pass his own redistricting plan in California that would offset any of the gains that the Republicans would get in Texas.
Right.
So I wanted to get more into that since we are now on the topic of independent commissions and just kind of ask what was going on specifically in California and with the Democrats' responses around the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So independent commissions have been adopted in a few states. California is one of them. Then Governor Schwarzenegger was actually one of the biggest advocates for independent commissions across various states. His advocacy for this independent commission actually led to more Republicans being protected in districts in California, thereby leading to, you know, more representation for Republican voters in California, which is predominantly blue. That being said, other states have not been as accommodating or welcoming to the idea of independence commissions. And really, as you mentioned, Angela, part of the difficulty is determining, are these independent commissions really going to be as independent or as effective in their goals to, you know, defend democratic voices. So that seems to be where we're at.
But we're never going to approach perfection.
Of course.
Okay? In a two-party system, there's always going to be side one and side two. And so, I mean, not having the legislature be the redistricting body and have a commission being the redistricting body, I am not so sure that that's going to make a whole lot of difference unless and until I know how these people were appointed to the commission.
Sure.
And I'm sure one might be a Republican, the other might be a Democrat, and so it's going to lead to that.
Yeah, I mean, the commissions are typically either nonpartisan, as in having apolitical members, or has equal number of Democrats or Republicans and then independent people. Right. Again, this is going to depend on state. It's my understanding they are appointed. They have to pass some screenings. I think that's what's going on in California. But I also think it's just notable how quickly they're able to suspend this. And again, there's a vote on this tomorrow. It still remains to be seen whether this is going to pass. It's likely to. But just how quickly I think it was able to be overturned's not the correct word, but kind of overridden.
Overruled.
When it's
right?
overruled, when it's politically advantageous.
Right. I mean, part of, I think, an addressable point to both of your statements would also be a proposal for proportional representation. Mm-hmm. So rather than having a strict one-for-one majority takes all, there'd also be a fair representation of how many voters are present within a certain district. Before just immediately redistricting, let's take a census, let's take a calculation of what is the actual proportion of voters in this district, and then align this independent commission in conjunction to that.
Well, as you know, when the Constitution was written, it was sort of a very strange formula that was used, and you counted anyone who was a constituent in the United States, and then you counted 2/3 of people who were living in the United States for their whole lives and but happened to be black, okay, and they only counted as I guess 3/5 or 2/3 of a vote.
Right.
But the Constitution does not require proportional representation. The Constitution says you take the number of people in the state, okay, and then you divide that number of people into the requisite number of districts with as equal population in each as possible. I'm not sure if that proportionate representation would require a constitutional amendment and not just an act of the legislature, of Congress,
right.
To do that. But
right. I mean, one of the principles, though, that the Supreme Court has emphatically defended is one person, one vote. So the interest of democracy is still to have people being represented. When these strategies come up in gerrymandering, like cracking or packing, I think people do call them out, and it loses the interest in having an active democracy when you live in a district that's basically you don't affect whatsoever with your vote. Which again de-incentivizes political participation, which just means further consolidation. So having more representation, I think, would be the goal here for trying to establish a new plan for redistricting that makes it more democratic and more proportional in general.
Proportionate between what and what?
I mean, any political group. So not just Democrats and Republicans. I mean, there's other political parties that exist out there, as marginal as they may be. They have their ideas to contribute as well. And they should also be engaged in the political process.
I think that the way that our democracy works is that those people get their feet on the ground and go out and they try to persuade, okay, other people who are in their district to vote in a particular fashion. That's democracy at work. Trying to manipulate the districts so that at least we know we're going to have a proportionate number of Democrats and Republicans, okay, or whatever third party in the district. It sounds to me like it might be defeating the democratic process of voting for substance and voting for issues rather than just aligning with parties. Just because you're in that district and you may be a Democrat and it may be you may be in a very, very blue district, you can still vote for Trump.
Sure. You can.
Okay,
right.
And I think that's where we're failing in this system because we're so nonpartisan. Okay, I mean we're so partisan that we assume that because you are living in a blue area, you're going to vote Democrat, and we assume that because you're living in a red area, you're going to vote Republican. And that's the assumption that we have to crack. We have to make it so that's not necessarily true. And that's what I'm hoping is going to happen in 2018 when maybe some people will open their eyes, okay, and understand that.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of conclude or at least introduce one other topic for this show. And so I wanted to ask what you all thought was the best strategy for Democrats moving forward. As we've discussed, this gerrymandering attempt, which is very likely to go through, is going to give more districts to the Republicans in a time where the midterms for the House it's really the Democrats' greatest opportunity at getting any sort of power back. The House typically favors the party that is not in power in the midterm elections. And so as we've also discussed, Governor Newsom is attempting to gerrymander his own state, but I'm curious whether you think that is a good strategy and if there are any other strategies that you can think of for the Democrats to really regain strength as much as they can leading up to this midterm election.
Well, my view is that the Democrats have to employ that strategy, that there's really it makes no sense not to, okay? Just because we were beaten to the gun, and I use the term we because I am included in that, we were beaten to employing the strategy doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. But as importantly, Democrats have to get out there and campaign. They have to get like we do in every election, they have to get their points of view over to people who are on the fence. They have to convince the other side, who they perceive as the other side, to vote more consistently with what they want to do. And I think the two going together is what has to happen. If Democrats sit back and don't redistrict, we're not going to take control of the House. And we have a couple of examples where we could do it. California, New York. I guess there are several states that we can add seats.
Right. Proportionally, I mean, a lot of these states have already been highly gerrymandered.
Yes, Iowa in
So
particular, right?
Yeah, Iowa.
Like the most gerrymandered state, I think.
New York as well is already very gerrymandered towards blue. But yeah, no, I agree. I think the fundamental principle is to bring, this awareness to voters. So even if they're in red districts, try to convince them to, switch party lines or vote in accordance with their interests rather than just voting along with their party.
Right. So it comes back down to not that voting has not been made unfair. It's that we have been out-strategized by the other side. Okay, and I mean, all this lamenting over what Trump and Abbott have done in Texas. Why isn't there any lamenting over what Newsom is doing in California, or what has been done in New York, or what has been done in other states? The real key should be to outlaw partisan gerrymandering.
But in the meantime, gerrymander back.
Absolutely. I mean,
If it's legal now, might as well.
Fight back, yeah.
we have to use the tools that are beating us.
Right.
Okay, and to say, oh, well, that's not fair, so we're not going to do it, well,
Right.
then you will not gain any seats in the next election.
Right.
Exactly.
Thereby making it more difficult to get anything done in the future. So agreed. But yeah, as far as this plan goes, this is California's kind of last attempt to really get this passed. If they don't vote on this suspension, then they won't lose the opportunity to gerrymander for the next 5 years. So it most likely will move forward.
What's the target of gain that they see in California?
It's just to offset Texas's gains, 5 districts.
About 5
They have a
districts.
plan to get 5,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, I thought I had also read that New York could also further redistrict
Right.
and add some seats.
But there are plenty of red states that could also redistrict.
So it would be
So
right.
it's going to turn into a whole
nationwide.
nationwide standoff.
Right.
That's what's going to happen.
It's a domino effect.
But there's more blue people. At some point, we have to win.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I think it's funny also, I mean, this is so clearly an attempt by Governor Newsom to really strengthen his position on the national stage leading up to possible 2028 run.
Sure.
You think he's going to run against Bernie? No. Oh, what a better country this would have been.
Yeah.
But
I think
we
he's
can't-
very
we can't-
clearly trying to portray himself as a fighter. And I mean, even tomorrow, this vote to suspend the independent commission goes through. I mean, he's going to look like he's really able to fight back and pull a lot of strings.
Well, what are your thoughts? What is the likelihood of it going through?
I mean, from what I've read, it seems pretty likely. And I think
really?
Gabe agrees.
Yeah.
The one from California.
Yeah, and the independent commission is probably the the most interesting aspect about this. But given how dominantly blue California is in general, it's going to most likely pass as long as they stick with blue.
Well, if the independent commission isn't upended, okay, or suspended or superseded, whatever the term is, that means that the districts remain as they were
Right.
in the previous congressional election. And in that case, the Democrats did lose some seats in California.
Right.
Okay, so that's why you've got to get your feet on the sidewalk and convince those people who did that to undo it.
Right. Right. But I mean, overall, I think the independent commission is still popular in California. They don't want to get rid of it altogether, but it would be a temporary suspension for the next 5
Yeah.
years
Until we needed to suspend
until
it
we
again.
do it again. Right. Right.
So does that suggest that maybe it's not such
It's
a
not
good
as,
idea?
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
as useful, perhaps.
I mean, I think it's also important just to note that there are a lot of swing districts in the 2026 midterms. Even if all this gerrymandering goes through and even if there are some gains on either side, I mean, that doesn't guarantee any outcomes. And I think a lot of the policies under the Trump administration have been shocking to a lot of people, who, even though the ones who voted for it. So I guess we'll just have to see how that goes.
Now you sound like Justice Roberts. You can't adjudicate based on what you think is going to happen in a future election. The Democrats may prevail handily, even despite the gerrymandering. But I do think it's the better course of action to play the Powerball and get as many as you can if you think that's really what you're going to accomplish.
Agreed.
All right, so it looks like we're just about out of time for today. So thank you all for watching tonight, and we will see you all next month.